So basically, we wanted to ask you about the Rambam's reasons for the commandments versus his opponent's views, and um, if, for example, he like Rambam gives reasons for like kashrut as, let's say, it's for health reasons, but the risk that he takes is that if his proofs are proven wrong, then people might get turned off by the
You can
commandments.
steer them away.
Right. So if you give logical reasons to the commandment, it also might minimize like the magnitude of the importance of the mitzvah. So how do we deal with this?
I think that many people, when you try to give reasons for the commandments, it takes it in a lot of people's minds, from my experience, it actually, in a sense, like, what's the word I'm looking for?
It takes away the majestic quality.
The majestic quality, the magnitude. Right. It sounds like we're just, giving like a reason. People prefer a lot of times to look at the commandments as something that's beyond understanding, because it makes them feel that makes the commandments greater.
Yeah, he thought, of course, it was exactly the opposite. Go back to what I've said before. Behold, this is your instruction. This is your Torah in front of all the people of the world, that they will see. Surely this is a wise and understanding people. He also thought God does nothing that's arbitrary or frivolous. In other words, he thought that there's no point at which God says, well, I want you to do it this way. There's no real reason why, just I prefer it. Just do it this way. He thought that would be basically blaspheming. To think that God would do such a thing would be to think that God is imperfect. Now, he creates, as you point out, a very serious challenge for himself, because if you give a reason for a commandment and it turns out that modern science or other developments change and that reason is no longer valid, he's in trouble. And he knew that. Okay. I don't think he believed that all of the reasons he gave were completely adequate. In other words, I think he saw what the problems are. He tried his best, as with the creation. So if you said, look, Maimonides, is pork really more dangerous for you than beef or lamb? Well, I mean, what is the disease with trichinosis? Is that the disease that comes with pork? Something like that. Yeah, but I mean, you can get sick from eating beef or lamb too if it's not clean and everything. So he would have to come up with a different reason against eating other than hygiene. There would be a couple things at his disposal. He could talk about the unity and collectivity of the Jewish people. He could say that when you put food in your mouth, you should remind yourself that you are a people that has entered a covenant with God. But the hygienic argument, I think, in today's world would be a hard one to do. He'd have to turn to something else. Okay, but he did. This is his position. I mean, take it or leave it. His position is every one of the mitzvot is a kernel of wisdom. Back to this passage, this is your wisdom and your understanding. Every single one of them has some justification. It may not be obvious what they are. Our understanding of the wisdom behind them may change from one age to another, but he was completely committed. There had to be some basic truth underlying each of the commandments, otherwise God would never have made them.
An intelligible truth that we can
intelligible truth. Now again, it may be he some of them, it's obvious what the prohibition of murder or the prohibition of stealing. All right, you don't have to be a genius to figure that out. But others, he said, yes, it's our obligation to see what the reasons really were. Qualification, which he himself makes. some of these commandments we would understand better if we knew more about the history of the ages in which they were given.
And we actually have more of that today. We have those tools at our disposal much more
have
than
the
we ever
tools
had.
that are, but even the red heifer. I mean, all right. I mean, who can understand that one?
But something like shotness, like
Or shotness, but
that where he refers to it as, these were mixtures used by the pagan priests.
that's right.
And actually, what's interesting is that the Kohen Gadol wore the mixture of shotness in the Holy of Holies to show, as it's a way of Hashem showing that it's not intrinsically, there's no force of evil or there's no power or energy within shotness. But the reason why we don't do it is because the ancients would do the same, and we want to separate ourselves from them.
You want to separate themselves, and in some cases, I think you could argue there's symbolism involved.
Right.
In the case of shotness, you could argue that, again, this is a religion based on separation. And in general, Judaism is opposed to mixing things that belong in separate categories. There's a whole metaphysical justification for that, given what we've said about the uniqueness of God. Can commandments reinforce this worldview in a symbolic? Yeah, I mean, sure. But it is always for him our obligation to try to understand what we're doing and why we're doing it.
The last chapter